saw there. This is another thing that's just fascinating to me. This is a facility. Do you know which one it is? No, but the facility.
Oh, Nanchang, one after.
Yeah, and how old is that one?
3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. This situation is straight out of the 1950s or 60s. This is cleaning the tank, lowering the water level, and then going in there and scrubbing it manually with a brush. Nobody does this anymore. This is a brand new facility built only 3 or 4 years ago, and they built it like it was out of the 60s. Today, they keep these enclosures clean with filtration and treatment. They don't get to the point where the algae is so built up that they have to scrub them manually. The reason this is bad is when you lower the level like this and you leave them all, I don't know, 20 dolphins in shallow water like this, to them, they're stranded. Their body goes through a series of involuntary physiological reactions when they're in shallow water like that or when they're removed from the water. Remember, in the movie, you saw these belugas being transported in these shallow containers. All right, to them, they're stranded. And it's stressful. And they do this every time they have to clean the tank. It's crazy. Again, this is a new facility. They should have built a state-of-the-art life support systems, and instead they built something out of the 1960s. It's also very small. There's 20 dolphins in here, and you can see the curve of the tank. It's probably not much bigger than this. It doesn't mean they live there all the time, but why did they put them all in there when they lowered their water level? Why didn't they put them in another enclosure where they could keep the water level a little deeper while they were cleaning this one? I don't understand what's going on in this picture at all, but whatever it is, it's not good for us all. This is one of the Sousa that's now at Chimlong in Zhuhai. It's, we didn't actually see this one. You notice the damaged rostrum, which probably happened in the wild when they were catching it or something. It's probably not something that actually happened. A net might be, which is why I wonder. But we didn't see him. We only saw 2 of them. And they looked fine as far as it goes. You know, they weren't covered in scars, and they looked at a good weight and all that. But where are the others? There's supposed to be 5? Now, we were told they're in the back somewhere, at the base. And I don't know what, we were making a joke about this. I don't know what the base is, but all the whales and dolphins that we expected to see and didn't see are at the base, where they're supposedly doing captive breeding. But if you ask me, there's a very real possibility that the other 3 are dead. This one included. I don't know. Well, again, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll try to see if one day there's 3 in the tank, or 4 in the tank, or whatever. But right now, there's only 2. So the reason this is an interesting situation is those Sousa chinensis, which is your white dolphin off of Hong Kong, is one of only 2 species of dolphin that's held in captivity that's on CITES Appendix 1. CITES Appendix 1 means you cannot trade in that species of wildlife for commercial purposes. That's exactly what it means. That's the whole point of it. No commercial trade. Yeah, you can trade in them for science and for conservation, and that's a tricky loophole, but no commercial trade. These dolphins are on Appendix 1. They were imported into China from Singapore only for research or conservation. They're on public display and they're making money for China. How did that happen? See, it's the kind of loophole the industry is champion at driving trucks through. They do this all the time. They claim, look what was happening with George Aquarium in the film. They were claiming they were doing it for conservation and research. They were going to put them on public display. Bizarrely enough, and I really do say that, bizarrely enough, the courts agreed with us. Normally we lose those lawsuits. And that was a blackfish effect. And we described that in Chapter 12 of the case against marine mammals in captivity. It should have been us losing in court. We sued the government before for things like that, and we lost. But now we're winning because, in fact, we should have always been winning, and the government isn't afraid of the industry as much as it used to be. They always wanted us to sue them, not the industry to sue them, because the industry had more resources, had more money, and could have pursued a lawsuit more fully. Well, look what happened. They did pursue that lawsuit. They lost, and they didn't appeal it, because they knew they wouldn't win and they didn't appeal. So that's the end of the talk. We are, of course, trying to pursue more investigations, visit more of these 80 facilities. We've gone to about a quarter of them so far. We are, for example, in the case of the Sousa that were imported, we also are concerned about a conservation breeding plan for Yangtze finless porpoise that were removed from the Yangtze River, where they were protected in reserves and brought into mainland China for captive breeding, where they don't need to be. They're doing fairly well in these reserves. They are breeding in these reserves, in the wild, in situ, where they are still behaving as wild finless porpoise. They are not being cared for by humans. And yet, they allowed 14 of them to be removed and put into concrete boxes for conservation breeding. These are loopholes that the industry has exploited for decades, and they still are, primarily in the East, I'm afraid, but still in the West, occasionally. But we are working to close those loopholes. We are working to try to improve the welfare of the animals that are in captivity, and one day, maybe, hopefully, have China and Russia have their blackfish moment, where the whole thing gets turned around. That's what we're working for. So thank you, and if you have any questions, we can try to address them.